What's up guys, Tanner here. I've been meaning to make this video for a long time. It's about one of my favorite subjects to talk about. This is an area of men's health and women's health for that fact. It's something I've talked about on Dish Nation. I've talked about it on Side Dish. I've talked about it with friends, and anytime the conversation would come up, and that's the topic of hair loss. And not everybody knows, but I'm not ashamed of it in the slightest. I've had 2 hair transplants. And so I decided I should finally make a video kind of about my experience with that, my decision process that led me to it, what it was like getting them, my thoughts on them, the medications that I am taking to sort of manage this stuff. And my hope is that there's somebody out there that was like me, geez, almost 10 years ago, who is looking for a little more information. Maybe they were looking for like a direct sort of like personal account of like what the whole thing was like. So anyhow, maybe this will be that video for them, because I didn't really have one when I was going through it. I just had to dig up all the research. I'm gonna put some photos in here. Some of them are going to be things that honestly they did not want me to show. Because it can be a little messy. I'm really gonna run it all down from A to Z. And honestly, truthfully, if that's not something you're interested in, go watch something else. If you're not interested, if you or a loved one is not interested in sort of like hair transplants and the medications around keeping hair or promoting hair growth, then this probably isn't for you. And that's totally fine. Not every video on the internet is for everyone. So go watch a video of cats or cooking or someone dancing. Please, that will make all of us much happier. 2 things to know about me is that on both sides of my family tree, the men lost their hair. So that would be on my dad's side. My dad has lost most of his hair. And then on my mother's side, her father had lost most of his hair. And so it looked pretty likely for me that eventually I was going to start to deal with male pattern baldness. Baldness in men, male pattern baldness in men, is largely caused by the increase of a chemical called DHT. As we age, DHT builds up in our bloodstream, and it will cause a guy to lose his hair in this sort of like, in this area, kind of that old friar tuck. Like whenever you see older guys and they have hair around the sides and around the back, but they don't have it on the top, that's male pattern baldness, and that is typically how it breaks down. Because DHT, for whatever reason, and I don't know all the science about this, go do more of your own research, but the hairs here on this section of our heads are more susceptible to increase in DHT levels than the hairs around the sides of your head. This is important to know, because the way that hair transplants work is they remove hairs from the back, and then they essentially plant them into the top. The hairs from the back remain immune to DHT as you continue to age. And so what you can do if you get a hair transplant is you take these hairs from the back and you've put them into the top up here, and those hairs remain immune to DHT, but the other hairs that were already here are still susceptible to the increase in DHT. If you are watching this right now and you have noticed perhaps a little thinning in these areas, in the tops here, or even in your crown, and you're not quite ready to make the leap into a full transplant, get on medication. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Your first stop, the first one you want to look at is Finasteride. You can get it generic. It's very cheap. It is a DHT blocker. People are going to tell you that erectile dysfunction could be a side effect, but the truth of the matter is that affects something around 2% of men. And then if that is you and you are affected by that, you can stop taking the medication and then everything will go back to normal. I say that because if I could go back and think about it a little more, running back to say like 2015, maybe even a little earlier, if I was like a little more focused on looking for it and I noticed it very early, I would have begun medication early on, because it's easier to catch something and treat it in the beginning than it is when you're late. With that being said, as I first noticed it in 2017, I didn't really think a whole lot about it. I should have started the medication then. I did not. And then we fast forward a couple years. I started to notice it a little more intensely. It was still mostly early in the stage of it all. Like, no one would look at me and say, "Oh, Tanner's bald," or "Tanner's going bald," or "He's experiencing a lot of hair loss." But for me and for the people who like looked at my hair every single day, it was a thing I could tell. I could tell it was coming. So I wanted to get ahead of it. And so I went to Bosley in Los Angeles. Dr. Bosley originally created this procedure, to my understanding. At one point, I had spoken with Joey Fatone about it. He used to come in and co-host a lot of Hollywood Today Live. He and I had spoken about these things. It's really good to find the guys who are willing to talk to you about this kind of stuff, because some guys won't. And I just decided I would be the guy who was going to be willing to talk about it, and Joey was willing to talk about it with me. And so I got my first procedure in May of 22. When it comes to the hair transplant itself, it's important to know that there are currently two kinds of procedures you can get. They are FUT and FUE. FUT is follicular unit transplantation, and FUE is follicular unit extraction. Both of my procedures were FUT, follicular unit transplantation. What that involves is they are going to take a little strip of skin from like the back of your head. I'm just going to use this as a rough example. And it's not shaped like this. It's more thin. They're going to take a little strip of skin from the back of your neck. They're going to literally cut it out. Zoop. And on this little strip of skin is like, lots and lots of hairs. And again, this is a particularly large looking, scary strip. This looks really large. In reality, if I remember correctly, it was much smaller, maybe something like this or even smaller. But for me, for instance, and it's very hard to see, you're not going to be able to see it here, is I have a scar that begins somewhere on this side of my head, and it runs all the way around until somewhere on this side of my head. Now, if I were to shave my head, you could probably see a real thin, tiny line, but that's what it is. That's what I elected to get. If I remember correctly, the FUE procedure might have been a little more expensive. I don't remember my exact decision process for this. Again, this was like back in 22. But anyhow, so the skip of skin comes out and it's got all these different hair follicles in it. And the thing that's important is you want it to look really natural when they plant it back in. So they would take this strip of skin out, and then nurses set about extracting the hair from the strip of skin they have taken off the back of your head. And in the meantime, the doctor comes back around and he pokes tiny little holes all in along your forehead and areas where you need the hair moved into. And they count so that they know how many hairs they got out of your strip of skin. And then they put that exact same number of holes in your forehead. And then once the hairs are literally extracted from the strip of skin itself, they are then organized because hair follicles can come out in a couple different ways. They can come out where they only grow one little strand of hair. Some can grow 2 strands of hair. Some will have 3 strands of hair. They're not all exactly the same. And so if you go to a good, reputable place to get this done, they are going to mix them and match them so that it looks as normal and real and natural as possible. Anytime I've ever mentioned that I've gotten a hair transplant, people are always like, "Oh, I had no idea. It looks so natural. It looks so real." Well, it is real and it is natural, and that's because I went to a good place to get it done, and I'm sure there are other good places to get it done, but that was my experience. FUE, the other procedure, is one where they have a very specialized machine, and it will go and it will remove the hair follicles individually directly off the back of your head. And so if I had gotten an FUE, I would not have the little tiny scar around through here. I might have little tiny dot scars, but they literally remove the hairs individually, and so they don't have to go through the process of like taking them out of the old skin. The old skin is not added back. You were just sewn back. I don't know if that creates a little facelift scenario, because that is skin off the back of your head that is slightly gone. It doesn't feel any tighter, but I don't know. It's been years. So I got my first one in May of 22. That was in Los Angeles. The recovery time is not bad. They give you a couple pain pills. The first couple days are a little rough. You will experience swelling in your forehead, so much so that like if you were to push down hard in the middle of your forehead, there will be an indentation. And part of this is because obviously you've got a little trauma on your head, and there's going to be some swelling. But then also, as the doctor has gone in and sort of poked these holes, and also the anesthesia to be able to remove the strip of skin, they've put some drugs in you. They put anesthesia and anesthetics and things like that. And so that is in your scalp, and it will slowly drain out. But the first day or two afterwards, you probably have a swollen forehead, maybe even swollen other areas here. That's normal. That's to be expected. It takes a few months. But there will be little tiny stubs of hairs when they take from here, and I'm sure from the FUE, little tiny stub, they're a little prickly, and you'll see them the next day and you're like, oh my gosh. And then what's going to happen, and they're going to tell you this too, is those are going to fall out. Those little tiny little stubs are going to fall out, and then you're going to be looking at yourself and you're like, well, this looks even worse than before. That's totally fine. That's totally normal. It takes a few months for the follicles to then begin to grow new hairs. They give you a care program to follow that involves spraying a sort of nutrient-dense mix on the forehead. They give you a particular shampoo they want you to use, and this is to give your grafts, which is what they refer to them to, grafts, grafts, the best chance of taking. By the way, that is ultimately how you are also charged, is your number of grafts. They will give you a range. Sometimes it's not an exact number because they didn't know exactly how many they were going to get off the back of my head. Everyone's hair is different. The hair texture is different. Hair density is different, yada, yada, yada. So they don't know exactly how many, but they're going to give you a pretty tight range. And then that's how you are ultimately going to be charged, is the number of grafts or the number of units. So for me, for my first transplant, I got some here in the crown, and then I got some in here, and then I started to fill in here. And I'm going to upload photos so this starts to make sense. It was growing back in just fine. I was totally happy with it. I had moved to Atlanta not too long after that. And somewhere in 2023, I had a check-in with Bosley here in Atlanta, just say, hey, this is what's going on. Does everything look normal? And they're like, yeah, everything's looking good. It's growing back exactly the way it should. And they told me if I wanted, I could have another. And I didn't have to. They didn't give me a hard sell on it. It was one of those things where for me, there was a couple areas in here and like the corners where I thought a little there would be nice. That'd make me feel a little more confident with the whole situation. So I set that meeting up. Again, I did the FUT, follicular unit transplantation. So again, they went right back to that exact same scar, which had been healed. And they opened it up, took a little, another smaller little piece of skin, and then set about implanting those along here in the forehead. That was December of 2023. Geez, that's 2 years now. And I honestly could not be happier with the results. I'm very confident in that decision. Again, very happy with the results. I will be honest and direct and tell you my first procedure, which contained a large number of grafts. My thought process was like, I'm not going to start it and do it and go halfway. I'm gonna go full bore. And I was able to get a small, it's called Care Credit, I believe was the company that offered the loan, and you can get a very low interest rate loan on a health procedure. And fortunately, a hair transplant, at the very least through Bosley at that point in time, counted as a health procedure. So I was able to get a very low percentage loan. The total cost, I don't remember off the exact top of my head. Full disclosure, I think it was like right around 10 grand, which is expensive. But again, that's me paying for it in Los Angeles and for a large number of grafts. My second procedure was a little less than half of the first procedure. And again, that's doing it here in the United States with a brand name company, Bosley, who I would recommend. Everybody's heard the jokes. They call it Turkish hairlines, where you go over to Turkey and do it. And from the stuff that I've seen is those seem to be just as well, just as effective. And I have heard that for less than what I paid, you can get a flight to Turkey, you can get the procedure done, your recovery will be spent in a nice hotel, borderline spa scenario, and then the flight home. And my understanding is that for less than what I paid, you can go to a place like Turkey and get the exact same thing and have another stamp in your passport. So if this is something you're thinking about, do your research on that. I don't have anybody that I can point you to over that. I know guys who have gone and done that, and honestly, more power to you. For me, it was one of those things where I hadn't known anybody. I didn't know anybody who had gone. I didn't know anyone who had gotten this procedure. I mean, like I said, I talked to Joy and other people, but I certainly didn't know anyone who had gone to Turkey and done it. And so for me, at that point in time, I was just a little intimidated of the idea of going international for a surgery like this. And so I didn't do it. I stayed here. If I could go back, maybe if I dug down and did a whole lot of research and found someone and was able to have those consultations, over Zoom or FaceTime or whatever, that might have been something I would have considered. But I don't regret Bosley at all. Now, the thing to know is if you do go through with this, they're going to be sure to tell you that the hairs they move from here and that they move over here, those are going to continue to grow. Those are going to continue to grow and work for the rest of your life. However, the other hairs in here, the ones that are naturally susceptible to DHT, you will continue to lose those if you do not start taking hair loss preventive medication, which basically comes in two main kinds. There's always new articles, and there are other things that you can take that I am aware of. I take two kinds. I started out on just one. I started out on Finasteride, which is the sort of like classic DHT blocker. Finasteride is the sort of generic name of it. It is the active ingredient in Propecia, which was, I believe, a colon, something to avoid growth in the colon at that point in time. And they found out that, hey, it turns hair growing back on. And so Finasteride is a very cheap and expensive drug. I mentioned that earlier. If you're even thinking about getting a hair transplant, I would get on Finasteride now. That's actually probably one of my biggest pieces of advice is if you are like me and your dad had gone bald, or your grandfather on your mom's side had gone bald, in particular, if both of them have, I would look at starting Finasteride now. Finasteride, I think, is like $15 a month or something like that. It's a little tiny pill. You take it every single day, and it works wonders. It slows hair loss down by something like 70%. Don't quote me on that. I'm just trying to remember some of this off the top of my head, but it does a very good job of slowing hair loss. And so if I could go back and in my late 20s start taking Finasteride, I would have done that. And I probably wouldn't have had to have gotten the hair transplant, or at the very least, I could have pushed that back years and years and years. The other medication that I take is Minoxidil. Minoxidil is essentially generic Rogaine. Everyone's heard of Rogaine, been around a long time. I think the major change is in the 80s and 90s when Rogaine came out. I think it was just a topical, and some people experienced scalp burning. I believe my dad experienced like some irritation on his scalp because he tried Rogaine. But now Minoxidil is you can get it as a pill. And so I take a Minoxidil pill every single day, as well as a Finasteride every single day. Minoxidil is interesting in that it works in a slightly different way than Finasteride. Finasteride's a DHT blocker. But basically, Minoxidil works by increasing blood flow to the follicles, and it also prolongs a thing called the anagen phase of the hair cycle, which is the growth phase, which helps to reactivate dormant follicles. The way that when you begin a cycle or when you start taking a Minoxidil, what you might immediately notice is some hairs falling out. And people will freak out about that, and you're like, no, that's the opposite effect. But what's happening is that follicle is getting hit with like a new dose of blood or more attention, and it's hit the growth phase again. So wherever it's at, a lot of times that hair will fall out, but then it will grow back thicker. And so it's going to make your hair look better. The other thing about Minoxidil, and like you're not going to be able to notice it from here, Minoxidil makes hair grow everywhere. Minoxidil will make you hairier. I have more hair on my arms because of Minoxidil. My facial hair grows in thicker, and I'm 99% sure that's Minoxidil. I have more hair on my chest as Minoxidil. I'm not getting hair on the back yet. I don't know if that's going to come for me in my old age or not. And so I'm also chalking up more hair on my arms and stuff to Minoxidil. That could be an age component, but I noticed it when I started taking Minoxidil. And so that's a thing that I do. Another thing that I do, because I am crazy about it and I am trying to keep my hair for as long as possible, is I got one of these. I got one of these. This is an iris store. There's lots of companies that make them. You're going to need to do your research on that. It is a red light helmet or an LED. It's a red light device. I'm sure you've heard of them. Please do your research. There are all kinds of companies out there that are just putting red lights without paying attention to the kind of red light or what is emitting the red light, and those things are just as important. And so that thing runs for about 12 minutes, and I try to throw that on almost every single morning while I'm just getting stuff done around the house. They say the whole thing with red light is that it is proven to work. Everything that I've seen is that it is proven to work, but the key is consistency over the long run. And so it's not like you're going to wear a red light helmet and then 1 month later just be like, oh, I have so much more hair. No, you're probably going to need to wear that thing for the very long haul, and it's probably going to add a little bit over time. And so what I would encourage you to do, and this was kind of the way the doctors spoke to me about it, is if and when you start this journey, you need to think about it as like a holistic thing. It's not that you're just going to get the hair transplant and then you're done, because the other hairs, you will continue to lose them as well. And then, so what? Let's say you got a hair transplant and you put it all right here, and then you lose everything around it. Like, that's not going to be a good look either. And so you are going to need to get on some kind of medication. I would recommend you getting on both Finasteride and Minoxidil. I'm not a doctor, but those two seem to work really well. Yes, there is Dutasteride, which it's not currently FDA approved. There are places you can get these kind of things. I know a guy who is on Dutasteride. He's the one who told me about it, and his whole thing is like, it's even stronger. I don't know. I can't speak to that. Again, this is not currently FDA approved for hair loss. Clinical studies show that it's highly effective, often more so than Finasteride, due to its ability to suppress DHT more completely. I'm just reading that off of Google. That might be something that I look forward to in the future, is maybe I'll ramp it up there. But anyhow, all that to say is, like, if you're a guy and this is a journey that you're about to begin, just know that even if you get a surgery, you're gonna need to get on some kind of medication, at bare minimum, I would get on finasteride. It's probably the cheapest. It's going to be your easiest to get. I would presume your local doctor could prescribe it. Certainly lots of online doctors are prescribing this sort of stuff. It's very easy to get. I've experienced no negative side effects of any kind whatsoever with finasteride. Clearly the idea or the rumor of erectile dysfunction is a very strong motivator to be scared of a medication like that. So I think it's caused a lot of guys just to stay away from it. I would encourage you to think about it from a statistics and from like a logic point of view, which is it's 2% of men evidently. And if you are in that small percentage, if I'm in the 98%, if you're in the 2% and you take this stuff and you're like, oh, whoa, that juice is not worth the squeeze. I would rather keep another male health thing working great and lose my hair, then that's totally fine. You just stop taking finasteride and that goes away, but you can still take minoxidil. And so that will do some sort of help for you. And so that's all I would say is like, if you're looking at this, know that it's not just going to be a one size fits all thing. If you get early enough, like if you're in your 20s or in your early 30s and you're watching this right now and you're remotely scared or concerned about hair loss, start finasteride now. I would encourage you to start finasteride and minoxidil now, and that will push back years, maybe a decade or so, your need, if you are so inclined, to get a transplant. But if you're looking at it and it's already creeping way back, I'd encourage you to look at your surgery options. Like I said, I did it with Bosley. I'm very happy with that. It's not the cheapest thing, but the returns have been very high. I get compliments a lot on my hair now. I make it a point that when I hear other men sort of like talking about it or feeling like they don't have any options, I try to jump in there and I say, hey, just so you know, like I've had 2 transplants. I'm happy to talk to you about any of it because I do feel like as men, sometimes we got to do a little better job of just sort of like putting some of our health struggles out there for the other guys to hear so that they connect to and know that, number one, you can talk to somebody about it, but also, number two, there are things you can do. Some guys would rather just, be sick than admit like, oh, this is bothering me a little bit, or think that it's vanity in some form or fashion. Like, people would call this gender affirming care, which seems to have gotten a really bad rep in some circles, but at the end of the day, that's what that is. I don't think I'm gonna do it again. Like, if things started to get real crazy, I might do it again. I might go to Turkey next time. Why not? I got the FUT, which is like the one where they pull the strip. And I will say about that is like there is a healing process with the scar along the back of your head. And you're going to have that little tiny scar along the back of your head your whole life. There's a little healing process there that I would imagine is not as intense with the FUE, which is when they take them out individually. But yeah, I would say if this is something you're interested in, feel free to hit me with questions. I'll tell you everything I know. But then also, it's free to get a consultation. You can go get yourself a consultation. Now, be aware that when you do go get a consultation, they want to sell you a service. And so do not be surprised. Listen, guys, just like when you're walking onto a used car dealership, there are salespeople and they want to make a sale. But this sale is also one that would stick with you for the rest of your life. It could greatly affect how you feel and your confidence as you move through the world. And one of the major motivating factors for me, just in full disclosure, was the fact that I'm, not married. I want to be in relationships. I am dating. And the women that I trust the most in my life mentioned that they had wished that the men that they were with had taken their hair more seriously and had tried to keep it longer or had pursued other routes. And so I took that, for me personally, as a sign that like my investment on this now is going to pay off more over time. And so that's where I approached it. This video is already so much longer than I anticipated it was going to be. Again, if you got any questions, put them in the comments, send them to me directly. And yeah, in a future video, I'm probably going to talk about testosterone. Testosterone is a thing that I started 2 years ago after getting my blood work done and my testosterone levels tested. And then I also run peptides from time to time. And those are things that I've found that as I've gotten older and I've tried to pursue, you know, a very athletic or athletic-oriented pastimes, that those things have made big differences for me there. But also, you want to go about those things in the right way and the smart way with doctor's supervision. Anyhow, that's it. That's all I got. If you like the video, if this was valuable to you in any form or fashion, let me know. And we'll talk to you next time.